Hello, I'm Rachel from Douentza Garden in Ireland, and you are very welcome to this video all about gifts to give to gardeners or plantaholics. And there is a vast range of stuff out there that you could give to your gardener or plantaholic friend. Some of it cheap, some of it expensive, some of it quite useless, and some of it invaluable. So I'm going to give you a run through of some gardening gifts today. A few of them are quite unusual, but I hope you'll find something in there to tempt you to go down that route for your friend. Also, if there are any children watching, there'll be a couple of things in here that you can make for your parents that won't cost an arm and a leg. Okay, let's get on with the video. It can be quite tricky sometimes to work out what to give to your gardening or plantaholic friend, especially since there's such a vast array of stuff out there. And you can spend a lot of money and end up giving them something that they don't really want. Now, generally, I would suggest not looking for some really valuable plant that your friend has said they want, because that can very often end up by you paying a lot of money and getting something that isn't quite right. So for example, they may say that they want something that is very hard to source, and you find seeds, but the plant will take 20 years to reach maturity from seeds, so that really isn't what they want. Instead, we're going to steer away mostly from plants today and just talk, I guess, a bit about some hardware. And the first thing that you might consider getting for your friend or your mum or whoever it is a good secateurs. Now, okay, let me just stop you there. Please don't go out and buy a cheap secateurs from a supermarket. Do look out for particular brands, because the cheap ones, the problem with them is that they break and they can't be fixed, so they end up not being very cheap at all. Felco, which is a Swiss brand, is excellent, excellent, excellent. And this one, which is called Fiskars, I have found to be really good too. And this is a lot cheaper than Felco. I think you'll pay about 50 euros for a Felco secateurs, while this one is a hell of a lot cheaper, really. Also, two things that are very much on trend at the moment in the way of, I don't know what you call them, gardening tools, are a hori. Okay, I don't have one to show you, but a hori is a long knife like this that is used for digging in the garden and for removing roots, etc. I think the name is Japanese, and that is something that everybody raves about at the moment. So if you see a hori and your friend doesn't have one, then perhaps you're going to splurge out and get one of those. Also, augers, which are attachments that go at the end of drills, and they're metal attachments that will dig holes in the ground, are so invaluable if you're planting bulbs or, I guess, any kind of plant. Very much on trend at the moment, and something to look out for. That will cost you a bit more than, say, for example, a Fiskars, which I think you can get that for less than 20 euros anyway. Okay, so that's tools. And the second thing you might like to give is a selection of clay pots. Now, everybody needs clay pots, whether they're for displays outdoors, for house plants. Everybody loves them, everybody wants them. So why not splurge out? Go to a garden centre and buy a selection of clay pots. There are big ones, there are tall ones. I would suggest getting really quite a varied selection. The tall ones are great for bulbs. Fat ones like this you might use for orchids or whatever. And don't forget the little tiny baby ones that are so sweet, and you might have difficulty thinking what on earth could be grown in that. But at a minimum, these tiny little ones can just be placed on the top of a stake like that to stop you taking your eye out when in the garden. So they're all valuable, and you can, for quite a low price, put together a nice selection of different clay pots, put it in a nice little box, and it's an imaginative and thoughtful present to give. Also, if you're buying for your parent, you might also consider painting on the clay pot, as my son did years ago for me here. This is worn off a little bit, but acrylic paints take quite well on pots, and if you want them to last longer term, then you could varnish them. I would suggest using the taller pots if you're going to paint, and that just, you know, that's going to make that present all the more special and something that your mum or dad is really, really going to love. Another cheap present that you might consider getting at the Christmas time of year. Now, you're not going to find this at any other time except Christmas, but it's an amaryllis. Okay, so these are sold as amaryllis. They're actually hippeastrums, but never mind about that. And you see lots of them in supermarkets at Christmas time. Bulbs sold in cardboard boxes, or sold like just in the cardboard box, or else with a pot and a bit of compost in the same box. Now, if you buy one of those, look for the biggest one possible and make it special by potting it up in a clay pot maybe, or depending on how much money you have to spend, buy a fancy pot and pot one of these things up in it, or pot two up in a bigger pot if you've managed to track down a bigger fancy pot for your parent. So that's a great present to give. If you've bought a kit, then you can just use the same compost to pot up your bulb. Make sure the bulb sits proud of the earth. That means that perhaps an inch of the bulb is above soil level. That's kind of important. Water it well once. Let the water drain away. So you must put it in a pot that has holes at the bottom. And then put it on a windowsill in your room where your mum and dad can't see it until such a time as you're ready to give it to them for Christmas. Now, it might actually start sprouting after you water it, or it might not. But don't worry, if you've a nice big firm bulb, then it's going to make a wonderful, wonderful present for Christmas. That one's definitely a Christmas present. Okay, a couple of other great things I'm going to show you now, and these are a bit unusual, and I don't know how well you can see here, but these are metal hoops, plastic coated hoops, and they're sold as peony hoops in garden centres. You can buy them in packs of 3 or 5 or 7. You can buy individual ones, and they are invaluable. If the person you're buying for gardens outdoors, then they will never be able to get enough of these hoops. They're called peony hoops, but they're not just for peonies. They're for any kind of perennial plant or a variety of other plants that might need that bit of temporary support during the growing season. And the way it works is that, so you've got a plant there that's floppy, 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 and you put this in front of it and just sink it in the ground, and it just stops the plant from falling over. Really, really invaluable things. You might think that's not a very exciting present, but no, I'd certainly be delighted to get a whole set of those. And there are other varieties out there. So this one here is great if the person you're buying for only has indoor plants, for example, because this is something that I could actually put it around the hippeastrum here. So it goes in a pot, look like this, and just supports anything with floppy long foliage like this hippeastrum, like this amaryllis does. You see? So, so invaluable. If you can find these ones, they really are a wonderful thing to get. If by any chance you find one of these propagating systems, now there are various ones out there, but basically to propagate a variety of houseplants, all you need is a little water in a cup. But there are designs along that theme which have test tubes in them, like my set does here, and they just look a hell of a lot more fancy than putting little bits of stem in a cup of water. And I guess your gardening friend is going to love this, because even if they don't use it very much with taking cuttings, it just looks lovely as a little ornament in the greenhouse or wherever else you might care to put it. So that's a wonderful present as well. Right, so what else have we got? Okay, now jigsaws as well are great presents, and you can choose a jigsaw with a plant theme for the gardener in your life. Jigsaws like this that have a lot of different things going on and different designs, I personally prefer, because they're easier to match the pieces. But different people like different types of jigsaws, and some people just love the hard ones where you got just basically two colours in the whole jigsaw and it's a horrible thing to do, I would find, but some people just love that kind of challenge. If you haven't seen your friend or your parent making jigsaws before, then I suggest that you get them a 500-piece jigsaw rather than a 1,000-piece one like this, because it's just easier, and well, they'll have something to do on Christmas morning, won't they? Along the same jigsaw theme, something you might prefer to do is to get one of their favourite photographs and have that made into a jigsaw. And this is a jigsaw made from a photograph of mine of an orchid. And there are various companies that you can order this kind of stuff from online, and they'll post out the jigsaw to you. So you need to get your hands on a digital copy of a photograph that is particularly prized by the person you're buying for, and get it made into a jigsaw. Something a little bit personal, a little bit special, and a bit nicer than just going and buying a jigsaw off the shelf. What alternatively you might choose to give is a basket. Sorry, we've got jigsaws falling over here. And here's just a wicker basket, and anyone, particularly if they grow vegetables, is going to feel very posh and smart if they have something fancy like this to collect their vegetables with, or their cut flowers. It is just a very ornamental thing to have, very handy as well, because they will walk around the garden, they'll cut and they'll pick, they'll place them in the basket, and yeah, great. This one is made of a kind of wicker, but there are different varieties I've seen online made of less sturdy stuff and smaller as well. And as long as it's not plastic, if it's something kind of organic, then it makes it a very attractive present to give. And then what you might also consider is, what about a board game? Board games are great presents, and there are plenty that are gardening themed. Well, there aren't plenty, but there are a number. And here are two of my favourites. This is a board game called Ishtar, and it revolves around the theme of building a garden. So you have a fountain and you build your garden around it and place your flowers, etc., etc. Now, what I particularly love about this style of board game is that it's not seriously competitive. So we've all had bad experiences of playing something like Monopoly on Christmas, and the game goes on, and you really begin to doubt how much your loved ones actually love you by the end of the game, because people get really quite ruthless and they end up taking all your money from you. And I know certainly when I was a child I used to be in tears by the end of that kind of game. This is not like this at all. It's a game. Yes, you're in competition with other people, but if it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out. The odds are not so much to chance as well. So it's not like you throw a dice. Strategy, I guess, and very nice one to play. And I certainly recommend it. Another game that I highly recommend along the same vein, and I really have moved away from the roll of the dice board games in recent years, is this game. And this one is called Alhambra, and it's modelled after the Arab gardens in the south of Spain, the famous Alhambra garden. And with this board game, what you need to do is build your own garden. So you can buy pieces that you place on your garden, and the whole thing will revolve around how many pieces you get. You get points for pieces, and also you get points for the extent of the wall around your garden. So it's quite a good game. Yeah, I really like this one. For 2 to, I think, 5 players. Really nice one. Very laid back first thing in the morning game. If you have the luxury of being able to play a board game first thing in the morning, it won't traumatize you too much for the rest of the day. And there's a third game that I have requested for Christmas this year called Cottage Garden, which really, really looks great. So I will tell you more about that when I get my hands on it. And I guess if there wasn't something there that appealed to you as a present that you'd like to buy for your gardening friend, you might also consider, and okay, a bit of a plug here for my channel, but I do have merchandise for sale, cups and t-shirts and bags with the logo of the channel and pretty plant pictures on there. So if you're stuck for something and they like my channel, perhaps you might consider buying something there. However, if you're buying for somebody else, I suggest not buying a t-shirt. Some people don't like t-shirts with big logos on or big pictures on, and there's always a problem with size, but there are mugs there that you could try. And let us not forget my book, Journal of an Irish Garden, which makes a great present for any gardener in your life. It's an easy read book that costs $10, and you can have it shipped to you locally if you purchase it from lulu.com, and the details for that are in the video description. And if you really can't think of anything else, there are various subscriptions that you could take out for your mother, your father, your gardening friend. For a magazine, for example, there's the Irish Garden magazine that I write for, and you could get them an annual subscription. Gardens Illustrated, the wonderful English magazine, and I'm sure there are a whole host of them over there in the States as well that your loved one would be delighted to get a subscription to. You can also here in Ireland get an annual pass for certain gardens, so that is a nice present to give if your person is someone who loves to visit gardens. And I guess that's all I have to say, except that I hope the present hunting is going well, and perhaps you have some suggestions here. And if you don't want to, or it's too late to buy any of these things for someone for Christmas, then maybe when their birthday comes around, you might consider one of these things. Anyway, have a wonderful, wonderful plant-filled, gardening-filled, it won't be gardening-filled, but a plant-filled Christmas. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching, and bye.